Okay, let's start looking what actually shapes the weather. First, let's look at volcanoes. A large volcano, if it puts debris up into the stratosphere, and that's this high upper layer, it is so quiet there that if ash and debris gets up there, it lasts for 1 to 3 years. If it's really big, it can last up to 7 years. They had one volcano, went off on my birthday, April 5th, 1815, a little before I was born. And it was so huge, it put 35 cubic miles of ground up ash 75 miles high into the atmosphere. And the next year was called the year without a summer because they had blizzards of snow in June, July, and August south of the Ohio River. Notice, this is volcanic ash. It's not like that ash when you burn wood. It's volcanic glass. It reflects back incoming sunlight. And then, notice this picture over here? It accumulates water. And you get, here's a normal raindrop. When you have that much debris in the atmosphere, the water gets divided up, and so you get micro droplets. So it forms clouds. When Pinatubo went off, that was 1991, and it went off in the Philippines. 5 eruptions between 15 to 25 miles high. And when it blew up, it formed clouds as large as the state of Montana, which sounds impressive to almost every state except Texas. But clouds the size of Montana, 10 to 15 miles thick. And it filtered out so much incoming sunlight that the Earth cooled 1/2 of 1 degree. Again, it doesn't sound like much, but I have a lot of clients in Alberta. See, I find cattlemen everywhere. And he phoned me the next year, and he said, look, I have a foot of snow in my field, and it was the 3rd week of August. I just got back from Ontario. Their crops never ripened that entire year afterwards. Green in the fields until the winter snow covered them. So, you put the debris up, it floats in the atmosphere, reflecting back incoming sunlight, creating cooler conditions. It gathers water, forms clouds, and they block out even more sunlight. And finally, when it rains, it's super heavy rains. Pinatubo went off in 1991. In 1993, when all that debris finally rained out, you had the huge flood, the 1993 floods in the upper Mississippi. After big volcanoes, first you have cold or changes in weather, then you have heavy rains. Why is it I'm not hearing anybody looking sad at heavy rains? Why is this important? Well, you can go decades without a large volcano. But in 2011, we had 2 huge volcanoes that went off in the polar region. Grímsvötn in the North Atlantic, Cheveluch in the North Pacific. Now, you have to realize, this was having one in the Atlantic, one in the Pacific, in the poles. The last time that happened was 1783, 1784. You have been experiencing weather that has not been seen since the 1700s. If you think it's been weird, the answer is, you're right, it's weird. But that debris is in the process of falling out. Also, notice, after a long quiet spell, there's a lot of moderate volcanoes going off. And a large volcano can alter climate for a couple of years. Smaller volcanoes put the debris in a cold front, and they cool off the single front. They affect weather for maybe 1 to 2 weeks. 2011, 2 large volcanoes erupted. They started cooling the Arctic. Last summer, the Arctic was so cold, it was the coldest ever recorded. We've been keeping records only since the 70s, but we've never seen conditions as cold as last summer. The ice grew 900,000 square miles. What? You mean they weren't reporting ice growing? It grew. And I told my clients, look out, if you think it's cold up there, wait till you see how it feels down here. When the volcanoes first went off in 2011, they cooled the air, they changed air pressure, and wind is shaped by air pressure. So the winter of 2011, 2012, the winds were so strong that they pinned all that cold air north. And remember 2012, how hot it was? It's because the Arctic air never escaped south. It kept staying trapped up in the north. You know, we were hot. Alaska, Fairbanks had, what, 29 feet of snow in their streets. I like to say they took the hit for the lower 48. Well, eventually, those winds weakened. And when they weakened, the cold air finally escaped south. And as a result, that record cold air, when it reached North America, look what it did. And also, notice the pattern. Center of the country, east, center, east. None of it's going west. We're having none of that cold air and ash causing storms and rainfall in the west of the Rockies. Now, that's not the end of the story. Guess what? We had another volcano go off. February 13th, a huge volcano went off in Indonesia, in the tropics. It was 18 plus miles high. The sulfur and debris cloud from that was bigger than the entire island of Java, where it erupted. And by the way, Java is the center of rice production for Indonesia. So, see, isn't that cool? This is a picture, a satellite went directly overhead and looked straight down at the eruption. And where you're seeing white, you know, you can see right down there, the bottom of where the volcano's going off, then it's red, then white. That is where the debris is entering the stratosphere. Isn't that a huge amount of junk up there? Scientists are still studying the impact. And there's a debate. There's some scientists who say there's not enough sulfur. It won't affect climate. I look at history, and I bet it does.